Welcome back, guys. Well, today I wanted to give you an update on how my spring mushroom hunting went. Stay tuned. This one right there, yeah, that's the Dryad saddle or pheasant back. And that's the one that I showed you a few videos back that was really tiny, and I was waiting for it to get big to harvest it. Well, there it is. And this one's it's actually a little bit too old for me to harvest today. It was actually a bumper year for Dryad saddle mushrooms. You know, it was a little bit dry this spring, so I found the morels really did not flourish this year in my area and around the cabin. Usually I find a few, but I only ended up finding some false morels, or the Geomitra esculenta. So this is what they look like. And they have a toxin in them, so certainly that is not a mushroom that you should be eating. So I just sort of picked some of them to take a peek at them, but did not consume them, thank goodness. So yep, the Dryad saddle this spring were pretty good. I found them on a lot of hardwood, which is where I'd expect to find them, especially in this area on ironwood. And ironwood we have a lot of here, and especially I found them on dead ironwood. They can be found on live hardwood as well, but most commonly they are found on dead hardwood, like this old maple behind me. So Dryad saddle, I find, are a yellowish tan colored mushroom, and they fan out because they're part of a polypore family, so they kind of are like a shelf on the trees. And basically you want to harvest them when they're small, kind of about this size, like the size of your hand. Basically you want to harvest sort of the outer edge of them. You can use more of the mushroom too if it's tender, but quite often these mushrooms get very dense and fibrous, and you can't even cut your knife through them, and that's when you don't really want to use them. Or if they're really old, like this one, you just don't want to get sick from the bacteria and the bugs kind of that inhabit them as they get older. So I grabbed a few, you know, this spring, and they're characteristically known by that kind of scaly pattern on the top that kind of looks like a pheasant's wing. And also the Dryad saddles are known for having a thick blackish stem, as well as that sort of scaly pattern on the top of them. Underneath they have really tiny pores that expand out into kind of, you know, in a geometric shape, as you can see here. I find they're most tender and they taste the best when the pores are very tiny and you can easily scrape them off with your knife. So that's another thing to take into consideration when you're finding these Dryad saddle. My favorite way to cook them up is in a pan with butter and garlic, and then if I'm not going to use them, I'll cook them up that way and you know, freeze them in little freezer bags. That's a great way to store them if you're not ready to eat them all right away. When you find them, the Dryad saddle will have a slight smell of cucumber or watermelon rind. After that, I find they tend to smell kind of plasticky. It's not commonly that I'll smell that watermelon smell. It seems to last only like a few hours or in a very specific part of its development, so don't use that as your only way to identify them. Another mushroom I enjoyed this spring but didn't have very many of was the yellow morel. It seems the ones I found were quite large, and hey, they were still really enjoyable. You know, when you're identifying morels, there's different ones out in the field. I did a video on them last year. You know, in this area I do find the yellow morels, the black morels out early in the season. The morel mushrooms are a very choice edible mushroom. And these ones basically, you know, when you cut them through, the stem and the cap they're all continuous and they're hollow inside. And the outside basically has, as you can see, a honeycomb-like shape to the top part of the mushroom. That's one of the key identifying factors of it. But make sure you cut them in half if you're not sure what you're looking for. There are many false lookalikes, and like I said, I did a video on that last year, and I'll put the link here so that you can watch that video. Another nice find this spring was Aspen oyster mushrooms. So oyster mushrooms you can find all throughout the year. In this area I tend to find the aspen oysters in the spring. These ones I found when I was hiking through the woods. A thunderstorm was looming, so I was kind of rushing back to the cabin, and I found this white patch going up this dead old aspen. And sure enough, I knew what it was. They were aspen oysters. So they are a really nice tasting mushroom. A lot of you might be familiar with the fall oyster mushrooms, Pleurotus austratus. And they tend to be a little bit more buff colored, a little bit more tan colored, you know, kind of a brownish sort of color to them. And these ones are actually very white. So they're nice and thick like an oyster mushroom. They have the gills on them. So they're an agaric mushroom. And the gills go all the way down, and there's really no stem to them. They kind of just come off of the dead wood there. So that's really cool. That's a really neat identifying factor. They grow in clusters on the aspen trees around this area. And one really cool thing is when you take them off the tree and you smell them, they smell of licorice. So that's really interesting. That smell is very, very mild and very sweet. It doesn't tend to maintain that flavor when I cook them. When I cook the oyster mushrooms, they tend to have a little bit of a fish flesh texture to them. They're very watery mushroom, but they're still very tasty. Again, I like to pan fry these as well, and when I don't use them, I cook them and then I freeze them. Right now I'm out looking for chicken of the woods mushrooms, and I have not been able to find them yet. That's on my bucket list for this year, is to find them around this area. But I did find a really cool edible mushroom just up the path. Let's take a look. Just walking up the trail to the cabin here, and there is another wild edible mushroom I wanted to show you guys. Now this one's getting a little bit old. If we look down here, you can see it. It is a cup fungus, so it should kind of remind you of that scarlet elf cap mushroom that we looked at earlier in the season together on my channel. And this one's called the brown cup fungus, and so essentially it kind of grows down here in the leaf litter area there. It grows down here in the forest floor, and its cap is extremely brittle. So when you touch it, it kind of falls apart. It's thick though. It's moist when you squeeze it. And it's really hard to see. If I can kind of dig it out here. You can see that's kind of growing on, leaf litter and stuff like that. It's not really growing on a dead tree. And as we take it away from leaf litter here, you can see there's really no stalk to it. It's got a kind of a smooth underneath side to it. So here's a kind of a cluster of it over here. So isn't that really cool? This fungus is actually reportedly edible once cooked, but I think this one's looking a little old and a little frazzled, so I'm just going to leave it for now and just enjoy it to look at it. And just a little note, if you guys are out there foraging for mushrooms, make sure you harvest responsibly. Take only as many as you want to eat or to feed your family. And make sure to, only leave footsteps, not leave garbage in the woods, and be sure to positively identify the mushrooms when you're out there. Use lots of books. I have several, when I'm out foraging, just to, confirm what I have. And also, don't forget the bug spray, because the bugs are pretty bad this time of year when you're out foraging. If you're out foraging for the first time, you'll want to go with someone who knows what they're doing. Maybe it's time to get out and do a mushroom foray with a local mushroom group, so you can check that out as well. Remember, be safe. Not all mushrooms are edible, and some mushrooms are only edible once, if you get my drift. There's also a really good channel out there called Learn Your Land, and Adam Harriton has that channel, and he does a lot of mushroom foraging and has excellent educational videos on edible and non-edible mushrooms and plants. I'll put a link down below in the description box so you guys can check out that channel as well. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. I hope you're out enjoying the day, and if you're really interested in mushroom foraging, it might be a great idea to go on a foraging event put on by one of your local naturalists. Alright, hope you guys have a great week as always. Take care.